Okay, what we're going to do here is we've now got our stem created. I want to examine how we can actually attach these two parts. One thing I want you to notice first is where the seams are on these models. You'll notice on my base that my seam is along the z-axis, essentially, down the backside of the model. Yet my stem itself is rotated completely around in the opposite direction. I need to make sure that my seams match up. And actually, it's a 90-degree difference here. Before I create my next connection, you can see the seams again. They're the thicker lines, the thicker isoparms running across your surface. If they don't match up and I try and create a connection here, everything is going to look rotated. So I'm going to select this stem piece and hit E for the rotate tool. And I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees in the y-axis so that we can see there's a cohesive line running down the form. And then I'll just go to Modify, Freeze Transformations to make Maya forget that I actually rotated it. To bridge the gap between these two parts, we're going to create what's called a surface fillet blend. To do this, I'm going to select the top piece, hold down Shift, and select the base. I'll then right-click on the stem and choose Isoparm, and right-click on the base and choose Isoparm. I'll click on the bottom curve of the stem to make it yellow, and I'll hold down Shift and click on the uppermost isoparm of the base so that they are both yellow and selected. Now we can see I have that whole selection gap isolated. I'm then going to go to Edit NURBS, choose Surface Fillet, and from the menu box, Freeform Fillet. I'll hit 3 to round it out, and you'll notice what I actually get is a little gap which fills up between the two parts. Now, just like anything else that we've worked with so far today, there's history on this. So if I move these pieces around, it's going to automatically try and keep that gap sealed for me. More than that, it's automatically going to try and keep tangency around that gap. So that if I come in, let's see it from the side view, if I can grab all of these vertices, and we'll go back to the perspective view. If I grab these and I want to scale them out, it's going to do the best it can to try and keep these surfaces tangent so that we actually don't notice a seam across this gap. And remember, this is essentially 3 different model pieces. But when I click off of it, it looks entirely seamless, and that's our goal. So I'm going to go in the hypergraph. I'll take this freeform fillet, and I'll just drag it into the bishop group. Maybe I'll even name it lower fillet blend, because there'll be an upper fillet blend for the bishop hat in just a second. And I think we're good. So my last step with this is that I want to create a curve for the hat. We're going to establish that and also make a fillet blend between the hat and the neck of the stem. And to do that again, I'm going to create a sort of revolved shape. I'll make another revolved shape for the hat. Now in doing that, remember that in the last step, I revolved it along the front view. And that's why I had the problem where I had to eventually rotate my stem. So this time, I'm going to draw my curve from the side view, because this is going to be the correct angle. So again, I'll grab the EP curve tool, get in pretty close, and I'm now just going to draw out this hat. Make sure it has that rounded, sort of tapered form that we're used to seeing. And also maybe has that little bubble on top. To get this last point right onto the center line, I'm going to hold down X, which is snap to grid, and click close to that center line. You notice it's actually going to snap it to a grid point that's a little bit high, but we can move that in just a second. I'll hit Enter, and I've got a nice little rotated piece. If I right-click on this curve and choose Control Vertex, now I can make the necessary edits to make sure that this aligns with the base and that the curvature behaves in the way that I actually prefer. So let's round this up a bit. Some of these curves seem out of order, so let's just redirect those. I'll pull this one up because I don't want nearly that amount of dip. And I'll round each one of these out. And by pulling this last one down, I'll have a nicely, sort of gracefully curved top. So there's my upper curve. Well, I'll just select that, and again go Surfaces, Revolve, and hit 3 to make sure it's fully curved. And I'll have a nice little head. I'll go into my hypergraph, drag that curve 2 into Construction Curves, and my new Revolve Surface 1 I'm going to rename Hat. I'll drag the hat into the Bishop group with the middle mouse button, letting go of that right on top of Bishop. And then I'll also delete my history. Edit, delete all by type, history. Well, again, we've got another little gap that we need to fill. We're going to do this with a fillet blend. So let's first make sure that our curves run all the way down along the seam uniformly, and they do. So now I'm ready to stitch this up. I will select both parts. I'll right-click on the upper one and choose isoparm. Right-click on the stem and choose isoparm. I'll click on the lower isoparm of the hat and hold down Shift and click on the upper isoparm of the stem. And just like we did a second ago, I'll go to Edit NURBS, Surface Fillet, and choose Freeform Fillet. I'll hit 3 to make sure it's curved, and that'll be filled up rather nicely. If your curvature looks a little off, like it does here, well, we can always come in, grab a selection of those curves, and round it out till it has the exact proportions that we need. And there we go. That looks like it has it. So we've created each one of these pieces. Everything's been named in our hypergraph. We've got actually one last fillet, which I'm going to call Upper Fillet Blend, which I'll drag into my Bishop group. And again, delete my history. Everything's been named now. Everything's really working pretty nice. My Bishop does have a little bit of a different form than we see here, but it's pretty similar to the general form that we know of a Bishop-type chess piece. The last thing that I'm looking for is this little notch in the hat, and creating that is something we're going to cover in our final video in just a second.